The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Nearly 500,000 kids in Ontario currently attend virtual schools. Prompted by the pandemic, in a matter of months, a parallel system was created out of whole cloth. Tonight, we talk to educators about that shift to online learning to find out whether it's actually working. Then, what does news of a possible vaccine for COVID-19 mean for Canada? We'll find out from infectious disease researcher Dr. Isaac Bogosh. It's Thursday, November 12th, and that's next on The Agenda. Tens of thousands of families opted to send their kids to school online this year due to COVID-19. And for that matter, in plenty of places, a hybrid option of online and in person is the only option for those in high school. It's never been done before here on this scale. How's it going? Well, let's find out as we follow our custom of introducing our guests from furthest away to closest to our studio. So we start in Sudbury, Ontario, with Emily Caruso Parnell. She's the principal of elementary remote learning for the Rainbow District School Board. In Burlington, Ontario, Andrea Grusik, secondary school teacher with the Peel District School Board. And in the provincial capital, in the Jane Finch neighborhood in the city's northwest end, Tesfaye Mengesha. He's executive director of operations at Success Beyond Limits. In North York, Ron Felson, system superintendent for the Toronto District School Board's virtual secondary school. And in the Witchwood neighborhood of Midtown Toronto, there's Annie Kidder, Executive Director of People for Education. And it's great to welcome everybody to our program tonight. And I also should mention, since we're talking about online learning here, that of course everybody knows TVO is a provider of online learning across the province and partners with the Government of Ontario on all of this. So I put that out there in the interest of full disclosure for everybody's edification. We are just finished the first quadmester, which is a new word to me. I've heard of semesters, but now we have quadmesters, and that means it's time for an online report card. So let's go around the horn here, our virtual horn, and talk about how you would grade the program so far. Annie, in your view, how's it going?
Well, I'm not in a school, so I'm not sure I'm the best person to ask. I think that some of it appears to be going okay. A report came out from Ottawa yesterday that raised a lot of concerns about kids' well-being and mental health. And I think maybe the biggest concern is about equity. For kids who are already struggling, families that were dealing with a lot of challenges, it seems to be that, that it is more challenging to support learning online, and we have to be thinking about that. Relying on families forever and ever is not really sustainable and definitely not equitable.
Emily, what are you seeing in Sudbury?
I think that overall, I'd give us a passing grade. I think that we've done a good job of meeting these challenges and trying to meet the needs of families who are, as Annie said, coming from a variety of starting points as they begin doing this online learning. So I think I'd give us a passing grade. We've worked really hard in our board to make this as smooth a transition as possible, and it's been a real team effort involving really everyone in the board. So I think we're doing pretty well, all things considered.
Pretty well, passing grade. Okay, good. Tesfaye, just before you tell us how you're doing, Success Beyond Limits, just give us the 20-second speech on what you guys do.
Yeah, so we're an education organization that's based in the northwest part of Toronto, and we provide all sorts of academic and social supports. We're based in the local high school at Westview Centennial, which is where we operate our youth space during the school day, and it's open to students from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then we also have a summer program, which is located at York University, where students get an advanced high school credit before they get to high school.
And how much of what you're doing is in person and how much is virtual?
So we have both. So we do have the in-person portion. We've worked very closely with the administrative team at our local school to ensure that we are aligned with the public health guidelines that are in place, but also the protocols and procedures that they've put in place, and looking at ways that we can continue to support students. But we also know that we can only have a limited amount of students in our space. So we have our virtual space that's open for students to access at any point during the school day. So if they're not in the school building, they've opted for virtual learning, they can still get those supports as well.
Okay, and how's the virtual going?
I mean, virtual has been a challenge. I think for our community and for other communities as well. We know that access to technology has been a barrier for many students, and that's been the case since the lockdown. And that also continues for some students now into the new school year. We know some students have not received pieces of technology till the end of this quad, and we know that that's still an ongoing challenge on top of being able to navigate the online platform. So there are a lot of challenges that young people and families are still facing.
Andrea, how are you managing in Peel with virtual learning?
Well, I've had the privilege of teaching in the online school in Peel, and it's important to note it's in the secondary panel, so I think that's going to be significantly different than my friends in elementary. But I know it was certainly a rocky start in Peel, and I think for many boards. But at the end of the day, I probably put us at a B. I think we've adapted well. Many of the educators have, the students have described that they are certainly learning and enjoying the environment, and I'd rate us a B, a level 3 for sure.
Okay, you said a rocky start. What made it rocky?
Well, I think we had to pivot quickly, and as numbers grew in terms of those that are wanting to learn online, that we had to reimagine the education system, and it's no longer brick and mortar, but they had to, in Peel, go from many students in the classroom to many students online and starting an entire online school. And so rather than timetabling for 1,200 students, 1,500 students, 80, 100 staff, you're in the numbers for the Peel Online School at 13,000, 15,000, initially started at 7,000. So, there is significant change in a short period of time. And, this is new learning for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Ron, how about you? How's it going?
Well, I agree. I think we've 3 months ago, nobody would have thought that we would have a virtual school in the secondary panel, and now we do. And we set up that virtual school in a really short record time. If we were to build a brand new school, we'd have lots of lead time for that. We'd have months and months of planning and board staff involved. We condensed that whole piece into about 3.5 weeks to get the school up and running. In the Toronto District School Board, we have 18,000 secondary students in our virtual school. And I would say it's more than a passing grade, and it's more than a level 3 grade. I would say we're doing pretty well. 18,000 kids in classes with teachers, earning credits. We're nearing the end of our first quadmester. And all things considered, yes, there have been some bumps. To be expected, but overall, I think we're doing a pretty good job.
No, Ron, I don't think anybody underestimates the Herculean challenge you faced trying to put all this together on very, very short notice. But having said that, when you do hear from parents, what are the things that still concern them?
So as Tesfar said, there is a little bit of concern, and it's a significant concern around devices for students. In the spring, when we were shut down for remote learning, we distributed over 60,000 devices to students in Toronto, which is a significant number. And in the fall, we had requests for almost 10,000 devices. We were able to give almost 6,000 devices out to students this past fall. But again, we are short a few thousand that need to get to students. And that's been a challenge for us. But generally, students have been using all sorts of devices, whether it's their iPhones or iPads or Chromebooks. We've been able to pull from schools, and students have been able to adapt to the online format using devices available to them.
Annie, let me follow up on your first answer, where you talked about concerns over access to technology, fairness, equity, and so on and so forth. When you hear from, because your organization obviously you're not in one school, you're fanning out all over the place and you're hearing back from all over the place. How much progress do you think school boards have been able to make in trying to level the playing field in that regard?
Well, on the one hand, extraordinary progress. I think you can hear it from all those, teachers and principals, the amazing work that's happened very, very quickly. Somebody talked about pivoting. Our research director thinks people aren't pivoting right now, they're pirouetting. And there's a lot of that going on in an amazing way. I think that for school boards, for the province, for individual schools, it's not just the machinery of technology, it's trying to ensure that there are enough supports there for all families. For some families, the parents are working at home, they can support their kids in their learning. It's much easier for some families than for others. And I think that that's the one area that we do need more work, that maybe we need to be supplying people like online, child and youth workers or social workers, guidance counselors, mentors, graduation coaches. We have to make sure that we're not amplifying inequity. This has been raised as a concern all around the world. The UN raised the warning of a potential generational catastrophe. And I'm not saying it is a catastrophe in Ontario. I think people in the system are really doing an amazing job. But we have to make sure, by providing good policy from a provincial level and resources, that every family has what they need. And that's not just a Chromebook often, it's other kinds of supports so that kids are able to succeed in this weird world we're in.
Emily, can I get you to speak to that? What percentage of your students have the resources they need in order to succeed in this new virtual educational universe we're living in?
In terms of access to devices, I'm fairly certain that they all have access to devices now. Most of our devices have come from homeschools, and homeschools have been really effective at making sure that, homeschools know these families, right? And so they know which families may or may not have access to technology, and they've been really proactive about making sure that families have access to devices. Then, because of where we are, we also have an issue around access to the internet. So certainly there are places in our catchment area that don't have great internet access, places on Manitoulin Island or just some very rural locations. So we've done a couple of things. We've been able to hook families up with hotspots, so they are getting a cell phone with data access that they can use to access the internet in those places. Or we also have the PPM 164 mandated that we had to have an asynchronous opt-out. So we also have students getting paper packages sent to them and then communicating via phone with their teacher. So we've tried to sort of bridge those gaps in creative ways to help kids be connected and remain connected to a teacher and to a classroom, even if they can't always access the internet or their internet access is inconsistent.
Andrea, what's it like in terms of access to resources for all of your students?
Well, I think in Peel they did a wonderful job. Towards the end of last year, I think even I was actually working in the guidance department, and I spent a significant amount of time talking to students, being an in-between between the administration, the family, the student, and trying to get a good understanding of who needs what. And I think Peel did a great job trying to get technology into the students' hands. And sure, we could say a Chromebook might be insufficient or a phone might be insufficient, but I think we really gave it a good try. And I think even Fire Sticks were given out to students that didn't have access to stable internet. And so is it perfect? No. Are Chromebooks perfect? No. But in terms of the students getting access to technology, I have had no issues. And now back into the online school this year, I haven't had any concerns as it pertains to technology.
Okay, let me do a follow-up with you, Andrea, because I really need to understand better how you actually teach when you can't see any of your students. And by that I mean, well, you tell me how it works. When you are presenting to the class, I've seen a wide range of experiences, or I've heard about a wide range of experiences. A lot of students, I'm told, turn their cameras off and you can't see them. How do you teach under those circumstances?
Great question. So maybe I'll just walk you through my average day. So I do spend a significant amount of time on Google Meets. That's been my choice for just doing the synchronous learning with the students. I would spend a significant amount of time learning a lot of online engagement tools, such as Pear Deck. You do Kahoots, you do Flipgrids, and all the Google Slides and all of that. So I think a significant amount of time has been spent learning that and then implementing those online tools. And another portion of my day would be connecting with teachers, both in Peel, but I think really across the province. We have seen collaboration on a scale that we have never seen before, from my understanding. And together, I think a lot of these teachers have really come together to engage these kids and using different online tools to do so. But and then there's of course there's the email, there's the preps, there's the marking. But we've really had to learn a significant number of online tools to keep these kids engaged, rather than your 75-minute monologue in front of a Google Meet.
But do you tell them to keep the cameras on, or what happens when they turn them off?
Honestly, I didn't really spend a lot of time encouraging them to keep their cameras on. I got to know their voices. You are with these kids 75 minutes, 2 times a day. And honestly, by day 4 and 5 and 6, you don't even need to see their name flash on the screen to know exactly who's talking. And, I certainly would spend time conferencing with these kids, and they would put their cameras on at that point in time. But you can get to know students apart from seeing their face on a screen, and we talk about technology issues and streaming into homes. And I think if all 30 students had their cameras on, it's going to be a technology disaster. And so just often having me on camera and, having them just audio, it worked really, really well for me. And I think I could confidently walk away at the end of this quad and say, hey, I know my students. I've conferenced with every single one of them one-to-one and heard all their voices. And, I've had a wonderful time, and they've gotten to know each other. They have their back channel way to communicate when they're in their Instagram group or their Facebook chats. They've done a wonderful job apart from me, collaborating with one another, connecting with one another. They play online games after class or on their lunch with one another. And, I've had very few issues as it pertains to not being able to see my students.
Well, Tesfaye, let me ask you the follow-up question, and I'll put my little skeptical smile on my face right now, which is to say, if you can't see the students, if they've turned their cameras off, how do you know that they're actually there? How do you know they're engaged? How do you know they're learning?
Well, I think some of the strategies we used in our summer program was really looking at how do we create as many opportunities for students outside of kind of this big classroom where everyone's in to demonstrate their learning. So, it means like we would use like breakout sessions where there's smaller groups. And we noticed that when students were in smaller groups, they were much more willing to come on camera and to speak and felt more comfortable. So things like that, giving students the option to kind of speak through the chat function. So if students aren't on camera, allowing them to demonstrate their knowledges in different ways and using all the features that an online platform has. And I do want to say also, just going back a bit to the technology piece, one of the challenges as well that we've noticed with technology is that some students are getting laptops for the first time. And we assume many times that students, they're quick to pick up tech generally, but some students are getting laptops for the first time, and that's a challenge for them to navigate as well. And then also the challenge of the online platform as well is something that they're trying to navigate. So I think we've talked a bit about the barriers to access to technology, but also when they get them, there's also a learning curve. So I just wanted to add that as well.
Sure. Let me follow up on that, Tesfaye. The students who are using laptops or getting technology for the first time, how old would they be?
It ranges. It could be students that are as young as, in primary grades, or it could be students in high school as well. Many families can afford to purchase a laptop, but there are certain households that like in communities like ours, that have never had a laptop and have never used one, right? So at the beginning of the pandemic, we knew a lot of students were, engaging in online learning through their cell phones, and some of their cell phones, some of them may have had cracked screens. So it was a challenge to really engage within that environment. But now, as you know, school boards have been getting those pieces of technology out to many students, and also community organizations and supporting that. Some students are getting it for the first time, and there's challenges around that as well.
All right, let me get Ron first and then Annie to respond to this, and that is a report from the Toronto District School Board that suggests that lower income and racialized students are disproportionately represented in the online learning, whereas whiter, wealthier students are disproportionately in the classroom. Toronto District School Board report. Can you tell me, again, Ron first, what do you think the implications of that situation are?
Well, it's true. We do find that as a whole, our white students are underrepresented in the virtual school, and our South Asian and East Asian students are overrepresented in the virtual school relative to our in-person buildings. It is a challenge for us. We want to make sure, as what Andrea was saying, we want to make sure that we really develop strong relationships with those students and those families. And working with our home schools where the students come from, we want to make sure that those schools stay in touch with those kids and that they're providing supports as much as possible. So that it's not just on the virtual school environment. In Toronto, we've structured it so that the home school plays a significant role in maintaining contact and supporting that student as well. The relationship piece is key. We want to make sure we provide the supports necessary for students with special education needs, English language learners, and we want to make sure that those students are provided the same opportunities that they would in their bricks and mortar school in the virtual school.
Annie, what would you add to that?
Well, I think for one thing, listening to everybody, I think it's really important that we all understand how cool this is and how much has been thought through, how careful everybody's being. I didn't know that, for instance, in a virtual school, the relationship was still with the home school. But I think Ron's point about relationships is incredibly important. And what has to happen now, because this is kind of sadly the new normal, is that we have to make sure that those relationships are strong, and the relationships have to be with families as well as students. Mm-hmm. And I think I would still argue that probably there are more supports needed. People have already raised concerns about teachers, support staff, principals in particular, burning out already, and it's only November. So how do we make sure there are other kinds of supports there, so it's not just up to principals and the homeroom teacher, but other people to reach out to families to make sure they have everything they need, not just the technology. But I'm so impressed with what everybody's saying. So it's really easy to go into kind of, everything's bad and to awfulize, as Ursula Franklin used to call it. But I think what we're seeing is people really trying to rise to the occasion. I do think we're still missing a provincial task force. We should have had that all along. It's definitely not too late. And it would be a place to collaboratively problem solve and to ensure there's kind of coherent policy.
Can you just follow up on that? What exactly do you want that task force to do, and who'd be on it and all that stuff?
I think that there should have been a task force. There still should be one that has the teachers, support staff, deans of education, because faculties of education are involved in here, principals, directors, parents, students, everybody, early childhood educators, educational assistants, all the people that are interacting with students currently and have experience and are able to name the issues, but also collaborate on solutions. Somebody brought up collaboration. It's incredibly important that teachers and support staff are able to talk to each other about what's working, what's not working, what have I learned. But we're going to be in this situation for many months. And, right now I know, the province has kind of one-off conversations with people, but developing that coherence so that we're making sure everybody's supported and that nobody's falling through the cracks, and also that we're not asking too much of the people that are currently in the system, I think would help with the overall planning. We've had some kind of a task force to deal with the health issues. We've had a lot of focus on the economy. We need to have everybody at the table, including people from health, to make sure that, we've got a really great plan and a really well-resourced plan for education. This is our whole next generation we're talking about here. We have to make sure they're okay.
Emily, let me get you to pick up the story in as much as, unlike Andrea, you're at the elementary level, not the secondary level, and I presume as a result, Well, you tell me. I presume you need much more parental hands-on to make the virtual learning experience work better for elementary level students that, say, secondary students who might, be self-starters and be able to be on their own and need less parental intervention in order to make it all work. Is that the case? And if it is, are you getting that parental backstop?
Definitely in primary, so from kindergarten to grade 3, and particularly kindergarten to grade 2, the kids need lots of parental support. They certainly need less now than they did at the beginning. I do a Google Recess with my students every day, and Monday is JKSK, and now they can mute themselves and they can change things about their settings, and they know how to do all of that. At the beginning, they didn't know how to do those things. So kids are very resilient and pick up on these things. But definitely we are relying on parents to support and supervise and make sure that kids are attending and that they don't have 4 other tabs open on which they're playing video games. That's definitely a more enhanced role for parents than it would typically be if kids were in the classroom face to face. So yeah, absolutely. There's a bigger role for parents, particularly of younger children.
And is it happening? Are the parents getting involved?
In general, yeah, absolutely. We have great parental support. And we try to be as clear as possible with parents at the beginning about what this would demand of them so that they had a really clear picture of what this was going to look like, because initially we didn't know what it was going to look like in the summer, and then once we did know, we had to sort of develop our own local plan to make that happen. So we tried to be quite upfront with parents about what this was going to demand of them, and then we've tried to work with parents who have kids who maybe can't stay online quite as long, and how we can structure the day so that they can be there for the key pieces, and then they can do some asynchronous work during other times when they need to take a break. So we've tried to develop some flexibility within the model to accommodate for kids who require, a change of setting, or they need to take a break from the screen, or they need to go for a walk or do something asynchronous for a while.
Now, Emily, I want to do one more follow-up with you, and I'm really going to try hard here not to sound like a dumb Southern Ontarian when I ask this question. But here we go. There have been a few thousand cases of COVID-19 in schools all over Ontario, and for the most part, the vast majority of them are obviously down here in the south. I think last I checked, in all of Sudbury, in all of the greater Sudbury area, you've got 3 cases of COVID-19, and I'm not talking about in schools, I'm talking about in broader society. 3 cases. So why does anybody need to have a virtual education right now? It sounds pretty safe up there. Why isn't everybody in the classroom?
Well, we have had some more cases in the last week. The last week's been picking up in terms of cases here. And certainly we've had some people, we have a transition date tomorrow where people are going in and out of virtual learning, and our enrollment is going down a little bit, but not very much. And so people have a variety of different reasons why they're choosing to do this. So some people are working in healthcare and they just feel it would be risky to send their kids to school and have their kids possibly bring the virus into a school because they're picking it up at work and they're concerned about that. We have other people who have, people in their homes who are immune compromised, or people that they'd like to be able to keep seeing in terms of family members in nursing homes. There's just a really wide range of reasons why people are choosing to do this. And it really runs the gamut of, it works best for their family. It works best for their schedule, for instance. There are lots of advantages in terms of a parenting point of view, right? Kids get up, they have a leisurely breakfast, they show up to school in their pajamas. You don't have to fight about getting them on the bus in time. You don't have to fight about getting a school lunch ready, right? There are some significant advantages from a parenting point of view that make it an appealing choice to people as a way to reduce their risk.
Okay, I get you there. That's thank you for indulging me on that one. Ron, let me go back to you with this one, and then let me get Andrea afterwards. Ron and Andrea on this one. Students with disabilities, students with special needs, what are you able to, presumably you have to tailor things a little bit differently to deal with that group of people. How are you handling that?
So in the virtual school, we do have a full range of special education programming. I've actually had the pleasure of visiting one of our classes for developmental disability, and the teacher took us on a tour of a bee farm. It was an incredible class to visit, and just to see the support provided to our students with all different exceptionalities. We have, as I mentioned, a program for students with developmental disabilities, but we also have programs for students with autism, students with learning disabilities, and we have the resources. We're working with teachers to the word was pivot was used earlier. Because the accommodations that are provided in a bricks and mortar school are different in a virtual setting. And so developing those individual education plans for students has been a challenge. But overall, I think our students are benefiting from the virtual environment and learning just as they would be in a bricks and mortar environment.
Now, when I hear people from the education system say it's a challenge, that's usually code for we're barely keeping up. This is a real problem. Is that the case?
I think if you had asked me early in September, how are we going to do 5,000 individual education plans for 18,000 students in the virtual school, I might have had a different answer, but we really have done a very good push. I have an amazing team of principals and teachers in the virtual school secondary that are working and developing those IEPs. And I think it's a very different case today than it was about 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago.
Okay. Andrea, how about for you? Learning disabled students, students with special needs, how are you handling all of that?
Well, I've had the opportunity. I started my career in teaching in school, and I spent probably about 6 years in special education. And so as a result of that experience, I think it's been okay in the online environment. And, I've really gotten to know, or at the end of the day, you need to know your students. And so getting to know your students, especially as it pertains to special education, is going to serve them best. And so having the opportunity to, have a background in special education has enabled me to, take what is good for some and implement that for everyone in my classroom. And so, whether that's students that require extra time or chunking or, providing organizational templates or one-to-one support, rather than offering that, according to their IEP for 3 students, I've structured my online environment. And I know many of my colleagues have in such a way that really we're able to do what's good for some or what's mandated for some and do it for all. But I think at the end of the day, you really need to know your students and collaborate with your colleagues.
Well, let me push back on that just a little bit, because I can imagine you being a teacher in the secondary system, it's difficult enough even when things are normal and you're in class to deal with students who have learning disabilities or who may be somewhere on the spectrum or any number of different problems that you have to deal with in the course of your day. I just have to believe that it's just exponentially more difficult to reach these students when you only see them online. So even with all of the background that you bring to this challenge, to use Ron's favorite word, even with all of that background in place, it feels as if inevitably too many students are going to fall through the cracks here. Is that not fair to say?
No, I definitely would agree with you. I think I've been in a unique situation that I do have the experience, but yeah, I can't help but think, and I think it's also important to differentiate, there's students that have learning disabilities and those are the ones that are in my classroom. But again, there are students that are going to have learning impairments, mild intellectual disabilities, developmental delays, and that's going to be very different. And yeah, I think it would be ignorant for me to sit here and say, no, those students aren't going to fall through the cracks. A lot of those students, including those with learning disabilities, do require a lot of one-to-one support, and their individual education plans demand such. And I do think those students, is it better than maybe it was in September or, last school year? I think we are definitely making progress, but I think it's unfair to say that we are serving them with excellence at this point in time. We're getting there, but I think with excellence, I think that's hard for, when we have thousands of students and teachers that have limited experience and are really doing this for the first time.
Ron, you want to come back on that? Now, admittedly, Andrea's with Peel, you're with Toronto, so it's not the same
Sure.
board, but she probably speaks for many there.
Yeah, I was thinking as Andrea was talking, some accommodations are are easier to provide in the in the virtual setting. Sorry. For example, in a regular classroom setting, providing notes to students is an accommodation. Well, all of the material is provided digitally to students. So it really is looking at things differently. I agree about the relationship piece. That is really important, and I stressed that earlier. And so the relationship piece is key. But I think the teachers have really found innovative ways of providing supports to students with special education needs, again, through all the different exceptionality groups, not just students with learning disabilities. The accommodations, I just think of things like chunking and cues and other supports are easily applicable in the virtual environment as they are in the bricks and mortar setting.
Ron, I should just get you to do a quick follow-up there, because that's twice I've heard the word chunking, and I'm not sure I know what you mean.
Oh,
what is that?
Sure. I'm using EduSpeak. Chunking is just taking a large assignment and breaking it down into several components, so it's more easily doable for a student. They would do part 1, part 2, part 3, as opposed to saying, here's your whole project at once. A good strategy, like Andrea said, for all students is to provide chunking, but it is often found on a student's individual education plan as an accommodation.
Gotcha. Tesfai, how about in your experience? Do you have students who you are particularly concerned about because they not only are dealing with all of the issues around virtual learning, equity, resources, but also learning disabilities as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're talking about is education, but the reason why we've even gone to online learning is because of COVID, right? The pandemic. And so that's also disproportionately impacting communities differently. And I know in our community in the northwest of Toronto, it's been one of the hardest hit in the city. And so students and families are electing for online learning, even though that might not be the best educational experience for them, or it might not be the best environment for them to learn. But they're kind of weighing the balance of their own child's safety versus the need to learn. And so those students, for those families, there are a lot of challenges. We know that as the pandemic is a backdrop, as students are within the education system, their families are experiencing many inequities, whether it's around employment, whether it's being higher risk of contracting COVID. And some of these families are in households where they have maybe one device and there's 3 siblings in the education system all enrolled in online. And so they're trying to navigate that and figure out ways that they can all, submit their assignments. We've heard students that have asked and pleaded with teachers to just, can you just, and they're in the online environment, and asking them, can you just print off the material and let me just hand in the paper copy, because they're so frustrated with the online experience, and also just being not even having challenges around navigating the online environment. And so there are many challenges that they're facing, and it's disproportionately impacting those that are also disproportionately impacted by COVID.
Right. I've got 2 minutes left here, folks, and you and I all know that Stephen Lecce, the Education Minister, is watching this right now. So I would like to give each of you 20 seconds and give him one idea which he could employ to make all of this better. Okay, we're going to go from furthest away to closest. Emily, start us off. 20 seconds each.
I read a great article recently called Tofu Isn't Cheese. And the thesis of the article is that distance education isn't the same as the face-to-face classroom, and trying to make it the same causes a lot of challenges for kids and for families and for teachers. And so I think it's important to focus on those pieces that distinguish the distance education classroom from the face-to-face classroom, and really work with teachers on developing those tools and strategies and ideas and practices that support quality distance education.
Okay, Andrea, 20 seconds for Stephen Lecce. Go.
Yeah, I think as we give our students voice and choice, I think it's important for Lecce to understand that teachers as well, they want to have their voices heard, and not just on a consultant basis, but actually on a listen. There's a difference between consulting and listening. And so listen to what teachers are saying, listen to the concerns that they have in their classroom, and really don't be afraid to reimagine what our education system can look like. Teaching in person and teaching online is very different. And bringing those two together, I think it's important to listen to the concerns that parents and staff and students are raising.
Okay, I'm jumping in here because 20 seconds
Sure.
is 20 seconds. Tesfai, your 20 seconds to the minister.
Yeah, I would just say that any policy that's put forward, especially during this time, really needs to center and put at the center of the policy those that have not only just been disproportionately impacted by COVID, but are also having challenges as they navigate the online environment. I think if we are able to figure out ways to support those students, it'll also be able to support the broader student body as well.
Terrific. Ron, your 20 seconds to Minister Lecce.
Well, I would say that this is also an opportunity for real innovation. We put these virtual schools together really quickly, but after the pandemic, there may be a place for virtual learning going forward. And we want to really leverage the learning from this year because I think teachers have done an outstanding job, along with their principals, to get virtual learning off the ground. So we'll want to see how this can maybe continue in some form, not the same form, beyond the pandemic.
Interesting. Annie Kidder, put a bow on it for us if you would.
Okay, Minister Lecce, we need a task force so that everybody's working together. We need to make sure there are sufficient supports for families, and we need to center equity. And I agree with Laurent, we need to learn from what's happening now in order to continue all of the amazing innovation that's going on in schools.
Terrific. And with that, I thank Emily Caruso-Parnell, Andrea Grusik, Tesfaye Mengesha, Ron Felsen, and Annie Kidder for their wisdom and sharing it with our viewers on TVO tonight. Thanks, everybody.
My pleasure. Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A light at the end of the tunnel is how Prime Minister Trudeau referred to news this week that at least one of the vaccines in the works to fight COVID-19 actually seems to work. It's early days, though, so let's find out just how bright that light is at this point. Dr. Isaac Bogosh is an infectious diseases physician at the University Health Network and a scientist based out of Toronto General Hospital and the U of T, and he joins us now from his office at TGH. Dr. B, how are you managing?
Managing okay. How about yourself?
Well, something tells me you've got a bigger to-do list than I do these days, so I'm glad to hear you're still healthy and okay.
We're all busy. I think we're all managing it the way we can.
Good enough. Tell me, the news of the week, that this thing is 90% effective, or so they've found so far. How big a deal in your eyes?
Based on the data that we have available, it looks really good. And if it even comes close to being 90% effective in preventing COVID-19, that would be a huge win. I think we also have to couch this with maybe in cautious optimism. This was a press release. We don't have all the data. We have some snippets of data that the company released. Normally, we'd like to pore over the data and make our own opinions about how effective and how safe it is. But, you know, with the snippets of data that were available, it looks really good. And at least it looks like we're on the right track to developing a successful vaccine.
But to be clear, you have not been able to do the deep dive that you would like to do on what's come out so far?
No, I mean, quite frankly, I've got access to the same thing that everyone else does, which is, you know, we have some details. We know, they enrolled over 43,000 people. We know half got the vaccine and half got the placebo. We know that there were 94 events. They really want to keep this going until they have 164 events. Events, of course, is a case of COVID-19. We're told that the people in the vaccine group had significant protection against COVID-19, and that of all those 94 cases, about 90% of the people that got COVID-19 were in the placebo group. So at face value, that looks very, very promising. However, they got to finish the trial. We've got to see the data. We've got to look at the efficacy of the vaccine. We've got to look at the safety profile of the vaccine. And then I think we can have more meaningful conversations. But still, at the end of the day, I mean, based on what we have available to us, looks really good to me. And quite frankly, I think there really is room for cautious optimism. This might be one of the vaccines that really goes through to completion, and this might be one of the vaccines that's rolled out on a population level.
Just an odd, curious question. What happens to the 10% who don't clear it?
Yeah, great point. So we don't really know. And I think there's a ton of unanswered questions. So one of them is, obviously, what is the true efficacy and safety of the vaccine? But also, if you got the vaccine and got COVID-19, does it mitigate how sick you are? Are you still able to transmit the infection as readily as if you didn't get the vaccine? Like, there's a lot of questions that remain unanswered, and I think we'll have more of those answers as time goes on. But for the snippet of information that we had available, looks good for now, but of course it it just whets our appetite. Like it's like the teaser for a movie. It's not really the full thing, although it's a good teaser.
Well, let's keep talking about the trailer for this movie then. One of the things that has come up, and one of the things I guess I have learned through the course of this, is that it's tricky to store all this stuff. And apparently it needs to be stored and transported at minus 80 degrees, which sounds very, 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 very cold. Is that typical for a vaccine?
No, it certainly isn't. And there's a couple of vaccines, the mRNA vaccines, that appear to really require some deep freezing temperatures and deep freezers to do this. So it isn't typical. And of course that requires significant infrastructure to do. It's not everyone has a minus 80 freezer in their basement. Having said that, while there are logistical hurdles, if this vaccine makes it through, and if this vaccine is approved, and if it's going to be rolled out nationwide, I think, quite frankly, the rate limiting step is producing a vaccine for an infection that we didn't even know existed 11 months ago, not keeping the vaccine cold. We do have minus 80 degree freezers. We do have the capacity to, get this vaccine into people's arms all over the country. But yeah, there certainly will be hurdles to doing so. The other interesting thing is if you look at, for example, the vaccines for Ebola virus in the Democratic Republic of Congo, some of those vaccines needed to be stored at minus 80 degrees Celsius. And they found a way to do it in the DRC, which is, while working in a very resource limited setting, they were able to do this successfully. I think we'll be able to do it successfully in Canada. In which case, how close, if this is the real deal, how close to market, how close to rolling out might this actually be? Okay, please don't hold me to anything here. This is pure speculation, but it wouldn't be inconceivable to have vaccine programs roll out, sometime in early 2021, maybe in the first quarter of 2021. Like at the end of the day, the next steps are they're going to basically share their data with various government bodies, for example, Health Canada here at home, the FDA in the United States, and other bodies around the world. And those independent government bodies are really going to be evaluating the data. They're really going to look at the side effect profile, the safety profile, the efficacy. They're going to pour over all that data, and they're going to determine if this is the real deal, and if this should be approved, or perhaps it might not be. And if it is approved, I think we can start to see vaccine rollout shortly after. We already have seen the federal government take steps to implement vaccine programs nationwide. So hopefully everyone gets what they need to get in order before a vaccine is approved. So when the time comes and a vaccine is approved, we can just roll out these programs nationwide. This is admittedly a bit of a bizarre question, but humor me for a second here, okay? We have heard from various circles in the United States that some people who are Donald Trump supporters think that the news of this vaccine and its potential was held back by the big pharmaceutical companies and others involved in an attempt to harm the Trump campaign. Now, I'm not asking you whether you have any knowledge about that. There's no reason why you would have knowledge about that. But you do know the pharmaceutical industry, and I'm wondering if you have any examples you can look at which might suggest that there would be a political agenda to anything they roll out or don't roll out, not necessarily specific to this election campaign, but ever. So nothing comes to mind, but there are certainly smarter people who can answer that question better. What's interesting is we know in the United States they have a program called Operation Warp Speed, where basically they provide funding and support and resources to various companies that are developing a vaccine. Pfizer was not a part of that. So Pfizer had nothing to do with Operation Warp Speed. They did not take any funding. They were functioning independently. So that's kind of interesting because they're actually functioning at an arm's length from the government with this. So but in all fairness, I have no idea what motivated them to release the data when they did. Perhaps this is just when they had the data available and they're functioning independently. But I'm sure we could find several different answers for that question depending on who you ask. Well, thanks for humoring me on that one anyway. Okay, let's look at this. People who do what you do talk about the numbers of people in a country or in a society that need to be
inoculated in order to have what they call herd immunity. In this case, what would that number be?
Interesting. There have been a few different, back of the envelope calculations to determine this. The numbers usually range around 50 to 70%. Some of that might change based on how effective the vaccine actually functions. And of course, what's the appetite among the Canadian population to take this vaccine? I think it's also really important to note here that, of course, it does matter to that the number of people that do accept this vaccine here in Canada. That's an important number, but it's also important to recognize that this is a global problem, and we have over 7 billion people that should have access to this vaccine in an equitable manner. We know this is such a contagious infection, and before COVID-19, people are mobile. I mean, we've seen firsthand how you can have an infection from one corner of the planet land on any other corner of the planet in less than 24 hours. We really need a global push for vaccination, and that's why there's programs, something called COVAX, COVAX, which is a wonderful program that's basically trying to provide equitable access to vaccines. It's with Bill and Melinda Gates, the World Health Organization, Gavi. There's several different big groups that are involved with this.
Yeah, we're in
really
it too.
Help push
Canada's
for
in it too.
Vaccine.
Canada's in it too.
We certainly are. In fact, many countries are involved with this. So it's excellent. And while, of course, we definitely want to have vaccine uptake in Canada, and of course, we want to have around 60% of the people vaccinated. Hopefully, it's a lot more. We also have to think about the number of people vaccinated worldwide.
And again, tell us whether or not everybody, I mean, at some point when this comes out, I need to know who's eligible to get it, in as much as would the oldest people in society get it and the newest born babies, would they get it too?
Well, ultimately, hopefully everyone has access to this, but there certainly will be a priority group, and there's almost a triage of who's going to get this first. And we have a vaccine task force. We also have something called NACI in Canada. Don't ask me what it stands for. National Advisory something immunizations. Of course, I don't remember it while I'm on camera. But they really create guidance as to who should get the vaccine first. And basically, it boils down to people at risk of having severe outcomes and people at risk of getting this infection. So when we look at the NACI guidance, we see long-term care facilities, Indigenous populations, people in congregate settings, frontline healthcare workers. Like that's sort of the flavor of people who would likely be prioritized to get this vaccine first. If Pfizer goes the distance, and if Pfizer delivers what they said they'll deliver to Canada, which is 20 million doses, which is enough for 10 million people to get vaccinated, I mean, that's a lot of people. And certainly, I think 10 million people being vaccinated can certainly cover a lot of people who are at risk of having severe illness. So congregate settings, long-term care, those over 65, frontline healthcare workers. But of course, I think it's also important to remember that Pfizer is just one of several vaccines that are at the forefront of perhaps having a successful vaccine make it through to completion. But there's several others that aren't too far behind. We heard of AstraZeneca that are in advanced phase 3 clinical trials. We've heard of Moderna, Johnson & Johnson. Like there's several other groups that are not too far behind. So it's very exciting times on the vaccine front.
And just to be clear, you say 10 million people could get covered by 20 million doses because you've got to get 2 shots per person. But that presumably means, given the hierarchy that you just laid out, that presumably means that we're many, many, many months down the road before the average Canadian would be eligible for a shot. Is that fair to say?
I think that's fair to say. I think that's very fair to say. And I think it's also fair to say that while we have, based on the contract that we see available to us, we have access to 20 million doses for 10 million people. There's also the opportunity to purchase more from Pfizer if this is approved by Health Canada. But it's clear that we'll likely have several vaccines roll out through Canada, and it probably will. There will probably be many products, and we have 38 million people, and hopefully the vast majority of people will take this up, but it's not quite clear how many will. There's been various surveys and polls saying, we'll have X number of people accepted and Y number of people accepted. At the end of the day, I'm not really sure how many people will accept this vaccine, but there's certainly room for several successful vaccine candidates to roll out across Canada.
Now, we've talked on this program before about how Well, I guess in the States they call it warp speed. It is warp speed with which this thing is being developed. I mean, typically it can take decades or certainly many, many years for a vaccine to be developed. Do you think people should have any cause for concern that this is coming out so quickly?
No, I really don't, because quite frankly, it doesn't appear that any corners were being cut. They've really harnessed pre-existing technology that's been around for the last, several decades to create vaccines and essentially just tweak them so that they could make COVID-19 vaccines. So I don't think that any group that's in an advanced stage of vaccine development has started really from scratch. They hit the ground running with the pre-existing vaccine technology that has been used for decades. And in addition to that, they've also gone through the requisite phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 clinical trials with the data safety monitoring boards that we would see outside of COVID-19 vaccine or drug trials. So the process is sound. I think it's important also that there's no political pressure or extraneous pressure on independent government bodies to evaluate the safety and efficacy of these vaccines when they're making the decision to roll these out nationwide. But this is the same process. The other important point too is studying these vaccines doesn't end after they roll out throughout a community, right? There's still what's called post-marketing surveillance. Sometimes it's also referred to as a phase 4 clinical trial, but essentially tracking the safety and the effectiveness of these vaccines still is an ongoing process after these are rolled out. And you know what? It has happened in the past where a drug is rolled out or a vaccine is rolled out. And, in these phase 3 clinical trials, you're enrolling, 20, 30, 40,000 people. But obviously, that's a lot different than giving a drug or a vaccine to millions and millions of people. And sometimes it takes delivering a vaccine or a drug to millions and millions of people to see some very rare side effects. And there have been cases of drugs or vaccines that have been pulled long after they've been rolled out to a population.
Okay, just to answer the one question you asked me during the course of this, National Advisory Committee on Immunization, NACI. There you go.
So it's embarrassing that I didn't know that and it wasn't able to roll off of my tongue. I use the NACI acronym about 5,000 times a day, but it's not every second of the day where I actually have to think about what each letter stands for. So apologies and a bit of embarrassment on my side.
No need for apologies, no need for embarrassment. That's what we're here for. Anyway, Dr. Bogosh, it's awfully good of you to spend some time with us on TVO tonight, as you so often do. Thanks so much and stay safe.
My pleasure. Have a great evening.
And that is the agenda for Thursday, November 12th, 2020. In just 25 years, the Toronto Raptors went from being a brand new franchise to winning it all. Tomorrow, Nam Kiwanuka talks to Raptors head coach Nick Nurse about his long and winding road to basketball's top prize, the Larry O.B., which is basically the Stanley Cup of pro basketball, for those who don't know. Anyway, I'm Steve Paikin. Thanks for watching TVO, for joining us online at tvo.org. And Nam, we'll see you here tomorrow.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.